Chapter 8. Previously, after successfully breaching the ghost server to steal incriminating data, the team discovers that their patron Elena Vance deliberately sacrificed them to test Vane's defenses. Now viewed as expendable assets rather than allies, Elias and his crew must decide how to survive when their only protector has turned into a manipulative adversary. Now, Chapter 8 begins. The red light on the primary comms terminal didn't blink. It pulsed, a rhythmic, predatory heartbeat that seemed to suck the oxygen from the workshop. Elias Thorne stared at the screen, his fingers hovering over the mechanical keys. There was no code he could write to stop what was coming. On the display, Elena Vance sat in a boardroom that resembled a cockpit, bathed in the sterile, blue-white glare of high-end LEDs. The warm, mentor-like veneer she had worn during their seed funding meetings had been stripped away. What remained was the cold, calcified core of a venture capitalist who viewed human beings as line items on a spreadsheet. Elias, Elena said, her voice was smooth, devoid of tremor. We need to discuss your valuation, or rather your lack thereof. Behind Elias, Maya Lin stepped away from the junkyard cluster. Her face was pale in the glow of the server racks, but her eyes were sharp. Kenji Sato was already moving, hands flying across a secondary console, checking external feeds. My bank accounts are frozen, Kenji muttered, his voice tight. Every operating capital account, flagged for suspicious activity related to corporate espionage. They've locked us out of the grid, too. Elena leaned forward. It's a compliance measure, Elias. Standard protocol when a startup is implicated in the theft of military-grade intellectual property. Silas Vane has already filed preliminary injunctions. By morning, federal marshals will execute a search warrant. You'll be looking at 10 years in a federal facility before lunch. You did this, Elias said. He didn't shout. The air in the bunker was too heavy for noise. You flagged us. I managed risk, Elena corrected, shifting into the practiced cadence of a crisis manager. I am offering you a lifeline. Etha Core is insolvent, your hardware is seized, your reputation is ash, but I can facilitate a buyout. I will purchase the ghost server data, the only asset you have left, for pennies on the dollar. In exchange, I provide legal counsel to mitigate your personal liability. It's the only way you walk away with your freedom intact. Maya moved to stand beside Elias, analyzing the subtext. She's not saving us, Maya whispered, loud enough for the microphone to catch. She's sanitizing the evidence. If she buys the data, she controls the narrative. She hands you over to Vane as a rogue actor, takes credit for recovering the stolen IP, and preserves her firm's relationship with the board. Elena's expression didn't flicker. Maya always was perceptive, but perception doesn't pay legal fees. Look outside, Elias. Kenji spun his chair, pulling up a feed from the building's exterior security cameras. Down in the lobby, through grainy black and white footage, figures in dark tactical gear assembled. Federal agents, methodical, heavily armed, surrounding the only exit. They're here because I called them, Elena stated flatly. And they are waiting for my signal to breach. Accept the buyout and they leave. Refuse, and you become a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition. We have the evidence, Elias said, gripping the edge of the desk. The military AI logs, proof that Vane Dynamics is weaponizing autonomous systems in violation of Geneva protocols. We release that and Vane burns, you burn with them. Elena laughed, a short, dry sound. You think you're holding a gun? You're holding a grenade with the pin pulled, standing in a crowded room. If you leak that data without my protection, you don't bring down Vane. You get disappeared. And I survive. I always survive. Suddenly, the workshop lights dimmed. The hum of the cooling fans dropped an octave, then stuttered. On Kenji's monitor, a cascade of warning icons turned crimson. Power grid is being throttled remotely, Kenji reported, panic edging into his voice. Someone is cutting our juice. The cluster is hitting thermal limits. If we don't cool down in 3 minutes, the capacitors blow. We lose the local backups. We lose everything. Elena checked her watch, a gesture of casual cruelty. 2 minutes, Elias. The heat will wipe your drives before the agents even kick in the door. Sign the digital transfer or watch your life's work melt into slag. The workshop felt like a pressure cooker. Heat radiated from the overclocked GPUs of the junkyard cluster. Elias looked at Maya. She wasn't afraid, she was calculating. Her eyes darted between the freezing bank alerts, the approaching agents, and the dying servers. She wants the data hidden, Maya said, her voice cutting through the rising whine of the fans. She wants to bury the military AI proof so Vane can keep playing God, but she also needs to protect her own equity. If it comes out that she funded a company sitting on illegal military tech, her firm collapses. Elias felt the shift. The shock of betrayal hardened into something colder, sharper. He looked back at the screen. You're not our patron, Elena. You're just another vendor trying to minimize losses. I am the only thing standing between you and prison, Elena snapped, her composure cracking. Sign the contract. No, Elias said. He turned to Kenji. Can we bypass the bricking attempt? Kenji grinned, a feral expression that matched the chaos. If we reroute the remaining power from the industrial capacitors directly to the uplink, we can override the throttle. But it'll be unstable. One spike and the whole cluster fries. Do it, Elias ordered. Maya, prep the ledger. We aren't hiding the data, we're broadcasting it. Maya was already typing, fingers a blur. Weaponizing the betrayal proof. I'm packaging the Vane military logs with records of Elena's manipulation. Every email, every authorized freeze, every backdoor command she sent today. Elena's eyes narrowed. What are you doing? You're accelerating your own destruction. We're redefining the value proposition, Elias said, pulling up a command line interface. He coded rapidly, weaving a script that functioned as a dead man's switch. We are not your asset, Elena. We are your liability. The workshop shook as Kenji slammed the manual override switches. Sparks showered from the capacitor bank, but the hum of the cluster surged back to life, louder and more aggressive than before. Thermal warnings flashed critical, but the system held. Uplink established, Kenji shouted over the noise. Bandwidth maxed, connecting to public developer forums, press wires, and the SEC whistleblower portal. Elias hit enter. The script compiled instantly. Sending a teaser hash first, just enough for 3 major tech journalists and the SEC to verify the payload exists without releasing the full detonation. It proves we have the goods and that we are ready to drop the whole file if anything happens to us. On the screen, Elena froze. For the first time, the mask slipped completely. Fear, raw and unfiltered, widened her pupils. If that hash verified, the story would be out before she could spin it. Her firm would be implicated in aiding corporate espionage. The board would eat her alive. Stop, Elena commanded, her voice shrill. Elias, think about what you're doing. You'll never work in this industry again. That industry is already dead, Elias replied calmly. You just haven't noticed the corpse yet. He hovered his finger over the final execution key. Cancel the raid. Unfreeze the assets. Now, or the full torrent goes live in 10 seconds, and your name is attached to every byte of illegal military code in the package. Silence filled the workshop, save for the roaring fans. Outside, federal agents stood ready. Inside, the fate of Etha Core hung on a single thread of digital leverage. Elena stared at him, mind racing. She saw the headlines. She saw her career evaporating. Stand down, she whispered, mostly to herself, before barking orders to someone off camera. Abort the operation. Claim it was a misunderstanding, a clerical error. Release the assets immediately. She looked back at Elias, face twisted in hatred and grudging respect. You're making a mistake, Elias. Vane won't forget this, and neither will I. Noted, Elias said, but right now you're irrelevant. The red light on the comms terminal blinked once, then turned green. On Kenji's screen, the bank account status updated. Active. The power throttle released. Temperature readings stabilized. Outside, federal agents lowered their weapons, turning away from the door as they received the cancellation order. The immediate threat dissolved into the humid air of the bunker. "This isn't over," Elena hissed. "You've bought yourself time, not safety." "We don't need safety," Elias said, leaning into the camera. "We need leverage, and now we have plenty." Elena cut the connection. The screen went black, leaving only the reflection of the three of them in the dark glass. The workshop exhaled. Tension broke, replaced by shaky, adrenaline-fueled relief. Kenji slumped back, wiping sweat from his forehead. That was close, too close. "We did it," Maya breathed, collapsing against the desk. "We flipped the board." Elias didn't celebrate. He watched the data streams, ensuring the teaser hash had propagated. It had. News wires were picking up the scent. Etha Core was no longer a fugitive hacker group, they were whistleblowers with a smoking gun. Untouchable, at least for today. But as the workshop powers cycled down from the surge, a new alert popped up on Kenji's secondary screen. It wasn't from the press. It wasn't from the SEC. "Boss," Kenji said, voice dropping to a whisper, "look at this." Elias leaned over. The log showed that the teaser hash hadn't just gone to journalists. A fraction of a second before the public broadcast, a third-party node had intercepted the packet. The signature was encrypted, but the routing prefix was unmistakable. It was a Vane Dynamics executive prefix, not Sela's S, older, higher clearance. The founder, Maya realized, reading the tag, Silas's father. Before anyone could react, the hardline phone on the desk rang. It was a line they rarely used, reserved for emergency contacts that shouldn't exist. The ringtone was sharp, piercing the quiet room. Elias looked at the caller ID, unknown number asterisk. He picked up the receiver. The voice on the other end was old, gravelly, and carried the weight of an empire built on bones. "Mr. Thorne," the voice said, devoid of the panic Elena had shown. "Impressive maneuver. You've caught my attention. Now let's discuss what you actually have and why you should be working for me instead of against me." Elias tightened his grip on the phone. The victory against Elena felt suddenly small, overshadowed by the shadow of a much larger predator that had just woken up. "We're listening," Elias said. "Good," the founder replied, "because the game has just changed, and you are no longer playing for survival, you are playing for ownership." The line went dead, leaving Elias staring at the silent phone, the hum of the cluster sounding less like a victory march and more like the ticking of a countdown clock. In the next chapter, as the dust settles on Vane's crumbling empire, Elias realizes that Elena's sabotage has left them with a ticking time bomb in their own hands.